Later this year, we will offer a plan to end welfare as we know it. End welfare as we know it.
6 years of welfare reform have done nothing to end poverty, as 31 million Americans still know it. Yet now, as Congress revisits the welfare law, some are trying to tighten the screws.
President Bush is urging lawmakers to stiffen work requirements for welfare recipients when they reauthorize the 1996 welfare overhaul bill.
But this time around, the poor have a voice. A powerful, savvy grassroots movement has burst onto the political scene to demand an end to poverty in America. And they are not taking no for an answer.
We're fired up! We won't take it no more! We're fired up! We won't take it no more! We're fired up! We won't take it no more! We're fired up! We won't take it no more! We're fired up! We won't take it no more! We're fired up!
The 1996 welfare reform law ended a 60-year-long federal guarantee to help the poorest people in our nation. The new welfare program, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, or TANF, imposed a lifetime limit of 5 years or less, strict work requirements, and vastly reduced benefits for immigrants. The result? Welfare caseloads are down, but poverty is not. Poverty among working single mothers is higher today than it was 6 years ago.
We're just gonna have bread and butter for dinner.
In the booming economy of the 1990s, CEO salaries rose by a staggering 571%. But the latest census figures show that virtually none of that wealth trickled down to the poor.
It was the worst single-day point loss ever.
Now, with our country in a recession, hundreds of thousands of poor families are approaching their lifetime limits for assistance. Even in the good times, only 60% of TANF recipients got jobs upon leaving the welfare rolls. And all too often, those jobs offered low wages, no health care, no parental leave, no sick leave, and no vacation. For the millions who have lost their jobs or been denied government support, the safety net is in tatters.
We exist. There is a lot of us out there. We exist. You need to acknowledge us. You know, we've done everything the government's ever asked us. Well, I think it's now time for the government to help us.
Hi.
In a survey of 27 cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors reported that requests for emergency food assistance rose by 23% in 2001, and that half of all families seeking emergency shelter were turned away. The 1996 law gave states broad authority to run welfare programs as they've seen fit, and this return to states' rights has led to abuse and lawlessness in welfare offices. In Oregon, the Department of Human Services recommended that its clients go dumpster diving to make ends meet instead of seeking assistance.
So many times as I've been going through this process of trying to maintain my welfare status because I was illegally sanctioned and so on, I would ask myself, what is the crime that I have committed? What is the horrible thing that I have done? I was in a car accident and I got real poor.
Welfare reform has pushed millions into a state of crisis. But this crisis has given rise to a powerful new movement for economic justice, the National Campaign for Jobs and Income Support. Active in 40 states and the District of Columbia, the National Campaign is a coalition of hundreds of grassroots community organizations that includes neighborhood, faith-based, low-income, immigrant, and women's groups. Since 1996, these groups have fought at the state and local levels. But in May 2000, at their founding convention in Chicago, they formed an unprecedented alliance to advance a national agenda.
We are here today to take back our country. From coast to coast, low-income families are not getting the supports they need to thrive. let alone survive. Whether it's food stamps, Medicaid, CHIP, or child care, state governments are giving families the runaround.
The convention gave leaders a chance to tell officials from key federal agencies the real story of welfare reform.
My food stamp caseworker does not believe I have such a low income and asks me, how do I pay my rent every month? She asked me, do you just find bags of money lying in the street? She told me I would have to get a statement from my landlord showing that my rent was behind. Remember, I live in a condemned house, so my landlord isn't exactly helpful.
My caseworker wanted to see my children's birth certificates, which were in Spanish. She wrote all over them and threw them in the garbage can. I began to cry. I pointed at the sign, which said that translation would be available to people who needed it. My caseworker said that there was no one available to me.
The convention also brought together important allies, like AFL-CIO President John Sweeney, Children's Defense Fund head Marian Wright Edelman, and friends from Congress.
We're going to keep on marching and keep on organizing and keep on marching and keep on organizing until we have the jobs at decent wages and the affordable housing and the education, and we invest in all the children in this country. That's why we're here.
Since its founding, the National Campaign's members have been on a roll in cities and states across the nation, winning Medicaid extensions for poor families, education and job training programs, increased funds for childcare, fair treatment for immigrants, and living wage ordinances in dozens of cities. These local victories have strengthened the campaign's power to shape federal policy. In the spring of 2001, the National Campaign's skillful organizing, hard work, and media presence led Congress to pass a refundable child tax credit. Each year, this new law will deliver $8 billion to low-income families, making it the largest anti-poverty program created in nearly a decade. Analysts expect that the tax credit will lift 500,000 children out of poverty. In partnership with the Northwest Federation of Community Organizations, the National Campaign has also pushed for improvements in the food stamp program. A report on PBS's NewsHour revealed how food stamp applicants in some states must fill out forms as long as 40 pages. And it showed how people who qualify for food stamps are routinely turned away.
And then she told me, look, I'm not going to answer any more of your questions. You don't qualify for food stamps. She looked at my application really quick. She basically gave me this thing and said, go to this church and go to this food bank and get some food there.
No one even sat down with them to look at his income and then take out the deductions that he has for child support, for medical expenses, his household deductions, child care deductions.
In May of 2002, the National Campaign's work on food stamps paid off in a big way when Congress approved a $6 billion increase in the food stamp budget and restored eligibility to legal immigrants. But all of the National Campaign's victories until now have been a prelude to the major battle this summer when Congress rewrites the welfare reform law that created TANF.
We all can agree that the next chapter of welfare reform should be getting people out of poverty.
9 million people left welfare, a 60% drop. That, Mr. Speaker, is the definition of success.
And what we are going to do is lead people into dead-end work that leads to dead-end lives.
The campaign is working to assure that, unlike in 1996, the people most affected will have a place at the table. Rallying behind the slogan, End Poverty, Make TANF Work, the campaign is pushing for 7 policy priorities. 1. Open up TANF to 2-parent families and low-wage workers. 2. Promote access to education and training. 3. Stop the time limit clock for families following the rules and those in areas of high unemployment. 4. Help low-income parents balance work and family so that no parent has to choose between a job and caring for a young, sick, or disabled child. 5. Restore TANF and other benefits to immigrants. 6. Create new state and local public jobs programs. 7. Ensure fair treatment and racial equity at welfare offices.
And so part of meeting the work requirement.
In late February, the Bush administration released its plan for welfare reauthorization and ripped the veil off compassionate conservatism. The Bush plan calls for massive new work requirements that have drawn opposition even from the country's Republican governors. It allots $300 million for so-called marriage promotion programs, yet provides no new money for income support, child care, transportation, or job training. And it reduces funding for TANF by 22% over the next 5 years. A week after the Bush plan was released, the national campaign convened a big tent rally in Washington that brought together 2,000 low-income leaders, organizers, and allies from around the country.
I'm one of the TANF recipients that was pushed deeper into poverty because I work 2 part-time jobs. They feel that I should be a success story, which I'm not, because I'm still in poverty, and it's harder for me now for the fact that I have 2 low-wage working jobs and I don't have enough still to make my ends meet.
Bottom line is the work wasn't happening in my state, and these are my friends, my family, and people I care about. And so I wanted to make sure that we could organize and be even stronger when the reauthorization debate came up.
I got pushed off because I made $1 over the budget for a family of 4, which they require you to work 35 hours. Because I was fortunate and was able to get a couple of hours extra in a week, I made $1 over the budget.
And it's the most awesome thing to know that you can do something, locally, and then at the same time, let your voice be heard here in Washington, D.C. too. It's incredible, it's just incredible.
Janet Miles, a leader with Arkansas Acorn, kicked off the rally with a rousing speech.
We will be in the halls of the capitals. We will be in the streets, and we will be wherever we need to be to win, and we will win. Our families deserve it. And guess what, America? And guess what, Congress and those people on the Hill? We finally got a war to fight. So will you please, I'm asking you, but now I take that back. We're telling you here today, stop the war on the poor. 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 Stop the war on the poor.
Later, Joey Taylor of the U.S. Student Association described how the work-first model of welfare reform has forced thousands to abandon their education for low-wage jobs and workfare.
Did you know that in '96, 13,000 students were forced to leave the City University of New York system? And that enrollment at the country's largest technical college dropped by over 85%.
Next to speak was the Reverend Dr. Bob Edgar of the National Council of Churches, an organization with 50 million members. The rally reminded him of an event he had attended in D.C. 34 years earlier.
The keynote speaker on that February day in 1968 was Dr. Martin Luther King. Dr. King was in Washington, just like you are here. And he was here to start a poor people's march. We need to make poverty in this century as abhorrent as slavery was a century and a half ago. We need to end poverty now.
As head of the Senate committee overseeing TANF reauthorization, Max Baucus is a key player in the welfare debate.
As we move forward, I expect to be working together with whoever I can work with to get the job done. Now that might mean Republicans. That's okay if it gets the job done. Working together is the only way to do anything serious in Washington these days, and I'm not going to do something, however, that'll hurt low-income working families. I stood up for the refundable child credit. I'll stand up again, and I'm going to stand up for all of you. Thank you very, very much.
After the rally, activists marched down the National Mall to the Department of Health and Human Services for a protest targeting HHS Secretary Tommy Thompson. In his previous job as governor of Wisconsin, Thompson presided over a punitive welfare reform program and saw black infant mortality in his state rise by 37% in 1 year alone. Supposedly, Tommy wasn't in, but his second in charge agreed to meet with representatives of the campaign.
Deputy Secretary quote out, Deputy Secretary of the whole thing? Of the department, the second number 2 in charge.
He's meeting with me and
he said he can bring in, he said, you know, to find a group, he said if you want to bring in 10 children with you, he's downstairs now ready to meet with you.
Okay, we'll stay out here and support you.
10 minutes later, the group emerged with the deputy secretary's card and his promise to meet again. The day after this show of force at HHS, the national campaign scored its first victory in the welfare battle when the Bush administration dropped its outrageous plan to repeal the minimum wage for workfare workers. In states with already low welfare benefits, minimum wage repeal would have forced people to work for less than $1 an hour. After making noise at Tommy's house, the crowd on March 5th was still fired up. So they boarded buses and set out to confront two main adversaries. About 400 marched into the offices of the Democratic Leadership Council to speak out against the harsh welfare reform bill sponsored by DLC Senators Carper and Bai.
What does DLC mean? Dirty lying congressman! Dirty lying congressman! Dirty lying congressman! Dirty lying
I know you've already called the newspapers because they're already calling here to ask about the people who are protesting us. I mean, so it's a big PR stunt. We understand that.
I just want to say to you right here and now, it's not about a PR anything. It is about children's lives and decisions that are being made. And I understand what you're saying about this building and what we need to do. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We're here because we need to be here.
We want Bruce Reed! We want Bruce Reed!
We're here because the Democrats are supposed to be supporting us. They say that they support low-income rents, and they don't. Their proposal is the same as Bush's, and we want changes.
Even after police arrived, nobody budged until a team of leaders won a meeting with DLC President Bruce Reed.
Police need a raise! Police need a raise!
He said that he would agree to meet with us with 5 people and a meeting with Mr. Reed right here, right now. We got it!
At the same time as the DLC hit, twice as many activists laid siege to the Heritage Foundation, the leading conservative think tank in the U.S. Their goal was to find Robert Rector, a chief strategist behind the right-wing attack on welfare. Often cited by the media, Rector has made a career out of distorting statistics to depict poverty in our country as a myth.
We are standing up proud. You will hold the door. The people united. We will never be defeated. United. We never be defeated. This is our heritage.
When he finally appeared in the main hall, Rector quickly agreed to the group's demand to spend 2 days with poor people and see the reality of welfare reform.
With you and to let you show me the things you want to show me. I said I will make a commitment to work with you and let your organizers here show me the things that you want me to see, okay?
We want you to do it.
No, we got it. We got
it.
March 5th saw the biggest convergence of anti-poverty groups in Washington in decades, and the day's successes gave everyone involved a sense of their power in numbers.
How do you feel? I feel that I have been empowered, that my small voice has become very large today. And that's what all of these people are here about today, that their small voices united together can be heard and can make a difference.
On June 26, poor people's voices were heard on Capitol Hill when the Senate Finance Committee passed a welfare bill, sponsored by Max Baucus, that contains most of the priorities the national campaign has been fighting for. But House Republicans and the Bush administration continue to push for their version of welfare reform, so the battle to pass a final bill this summer is sure to be intense. The National Campaign for Jobs and Income Support demands an end to poverty in America. And it takes that demand to the streets, to the halls of Congress, and to television, newspapers, and the internet. Led by low-income and working-class people, this historic campaign is helping our country live up to its promise of democracy.
Voy a cantar, compañeros, algo que da compasión. Un día al frente del Cayman nos cayó la migración, mandada por el sheriff de esta mismita región. De la mañana, cuando la migra llegaba, llevando a 10 mexicanos y a otros 3 de Guatemala, otros lograron zafarse, dejando la ley burlada. Se trataba de un examen que nos querían hacer, una clínica.
To learn more about the national campaign, call us at 202-339-9328 or check out our websites www.nationalcampaign.org, www.maketanfwork.org, or write to National Campaign for Jobs and Income Support, 1000 Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20007. The National Campaign for Jobs and Income Support is a project of the Center for Community Change.
Un amigo que yo tengo nunca ha conocido el miedo, ya lo tenían agarrado de las manos y del cuello, cuando menos lo esperaban, los dejó con su sombrero. No entendemos